Ever been home alone and felt like you weren't really alone? That shiver down your spine, the hairs on your neck standing on end? You tell yourself it's just the wind, but deep down, a primal fear whispers that something is wrong. Tonight, we dive into 3 true chilling tales of home, alone horrors that are sure to keep you up at night. Stories that crawl beneath your skin and linger long after the lights go out. These are the experiences of ordinary people who found themselves face to face with the unknown, alone in the dark. Their stories serve as a chilling reminder that sometimes the things that go bump in the night are all too real. Picture this: a cool autumn evening, leaves rustling outside, casting eerie shadows on the wall as a gentle breeze whispers through the trees. Inside, a young woman named Sarah is curled up on the couch, a steaming mug of tea warming her hands. The only sounds are the crackling of the fireplace and the gentle hum of the television. Sarah glances at the clock, almost midnight. Time for bed. She stretches, a yawn escaping her lips, and switches off the TV. The sudden silence is almost deafening, amplifying the creaks and groans of the old house. As Sarah makes her way upstairs, a flicker of movement outside catches her eye. She pauses, peering out the window into the darkness. The streetlight at the corner flickers, casting long dancing shadows that seem to writhe and twist. Back in her room, Sarah pulls on her pajamas and slips under the covers. She closes her eyes, willing herself to relax and drift off to sleep. But just as sleep begins to claim her, a noise from downstairs jolts her awake. It's a soft noise, barely audible, a thud, like something small falling to the floor. Sarah freezes, listening intently. Silence. Then, it happens again. This time, a scraping sound, like something being dragged across the floor. She grabs her phone, her hand trembling as she dials her boyfriend's number. The line rings and rings, going straight to voicemail. Pick up, she whispers frantically. She throws on her robe and tiptoes to the bedroom door. Pressing her ear to the door, she strains to hear any sound from downstairs. Silence. Taking a deep breath, Sarah slowly opens the bedroom door and creeps out into the hallway. The hallway is dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon filtering through the window. Each step down the stairs is agonizingly slow. The floorboards creak under her weight. As she reaches the bottom of the stairs, she sees it. A dark figure silhouetted against the sheer curtains. Her heart leaps into her throat. She can't breathe, can't scream. The figure is tall and slender, its features obscured by the darkness. It stands motionless, staring out into the night. Fear paralyzes her for a moment, but then the instinct to survive kicks in. Our next story takes us to a rambling Victorian house on the outskirts of a small town, where a young college student named David found himself alone one long weekend. His roommates were away, and the old house, usually alive with laughter and music, felt eerily silent. David, engrossed in his studies, paid little attention to the quiet at first. It was a welcome change, he thought, a chance to really focus on his upcoming exams. But as the day wore on, the silence began to feel oppressive, broken only by the occasional creaking of the old house settling around him. As dusk fell, casting long shadows across the dusty furniture, David became acutely aware of the solitude. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves against the window pane sent a shiver down his spine. He tried to shake off the feeling, telling himself it was just his imagination playing tricks on him in the stillness. He decided to make himself a cup of coffee, hoping the warmth would chase away the growing unease. As he waited for the coffee to brew, he thought he heard a voice, a low murmur coming from the hallway outside the kitchen. He froze, listening intently. The sound came again, a soft, indistinct whisper, too low to make out the words. David's heart pounded in his chest. He grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, gripping it tightly in his hand. He moved cautiously towards the hallway, his bare feet silent on the cold tile floor. The whispering grew louder as he approached, a soft, sibilant sound that seemed to slither around the edges of his awareness. He peered into the hallway, his eyes straining to pierce the gloom. The hallway was empty, the shadows cast by the antique furniture seeming to writhe and twist in the dim light. He took a step back, his grip tightening on the knife. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling slightly. "Is someone there?" Only silence greeted him, a heavy, expectant silence that seemed to pulsate with unseen energy. He stood there for a moment longer, listening, but the whispering had stopped. David retreated to the kitchen, his heart still pounding in his chest. He tried to convince himself that it was just the wind whistling through the old house, playing tricks on his mind. But deep down, a primal fear whispered that something was wrong, something was not right in the house. As the night wore on, the strange occurrences continued. Objects moved inexplicably. A book falling from a shelf with a loud bang. A door slamming shut in the windless house. The whispering returned intermittently, always soft, always just out of earshot, as if whatever was speaking was toying with him. Exhausted and terrified, David barricaded himself in his room, piling furniture against the door. Huddled beneath his blankets, he tried to shut out the strange noises that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the old house. Our final story takes us to a quiet suburban neighborhood, where a single mother named Emily and her young son Ethan experienced a terrifying home invasion that turned into something far more sinister. It was a stormy summer night. Rain lashed against the windows, and the wind howled like a banshee, rattling the window panes in their frames. Emily had just tucked Ethan into bed, reading him his favorite bedtime story until his eyelids grew heavy with sleep. As she kissed him goodnight and switched off the light, a sudden sharp rapping on the front door echoed through the house. Emily frowned, surprised. It was late, past 10 o'clock, and she wasn't expecting any visitors. She peered through the peephole, but all she could see was a dark, indistinct figure silhouetted against the storm-tossed trees outside. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice barely audible above the roar of the wind and rain. A muffled voice responded, but Emily couldn't make out the words. She hesitated, a knot of unease forming in her stomach. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice louder this time. The figure outside mumbled something again, and Emily thought she heard the words phone and help. She stepped back from the door, her mind racing. It could be an emergency, someone stranded in the storm, but something about the situation felt off. The late hour, the muffled voice, the insistent knocking that had now escalated into a frantic pounding. She decided to err on the side of caution. "I'm calling the police!" she shouted through the door. "Just stay right there!" She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her heart pounding in her chest. As she spoke to the operator explaining the situation, the pounding on the door suddenly stopped. Silence descended upon the house, broken only by the sound of her own ragged breathing and the relentless fury of the storm outside. Emily hung up the phone, her unease growing with each passing second. She crept towards the front door, her hand hovering over the deadbolt. Peering through the peephole once more, she saw that the figure was gone. Relief washed over her, followed by a wave of dizziness. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. It was probably just some kids playing a prank, she told herself. But as she turned away from the door, she noticed something strange. A small, intricately carved wooden box lay on the welcome mat, just inside the threshold. She hadn't noticed it before, but it was definitely not there earlier. The next time you find yourself home alone, remember these stories. The creaking floorboards, the shadows playing tricks on your eyes, the feeling that you're not really alone. Sometimes it's more than just your imagination. These stories remind us that sometimes the real horrors are closer to home than we think. Remember to lock your doors and maybe, just maybe, avoid being home alone. Sweet dreams.